A little over a week ago, the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security appeared on CBS's Face the Nation and said that homegrown terrorism is the most common form of terrorism that threatens people living in the United States, but he doesn't know how to stop it. Okay? It's more typical of a Trump administration official to compound ineptitude with dishonesty, so points for candor, I guess? Still, it's a little alarming to hear the head of the Department of Homeland Security go on national television and say that he has no idea how to stop homegrown terrorism, but fair play, maybe that's more of a Justice Department thing. Although the guy running the show over there doesn't seem to have a very firm grip on the problem either. Regardless of whose job it is, I don't think anyone in the Trump administration has demonstrated any particular aptitude for preventing homegrown terrorism. One of the problems is that they are extremely reluctant to identify and focus on the actual enemy. Trump and company make a big show of standing up to radical Islamic terrorism. He even made sure to pronounce it just that way during his address to Congress back in February. Extra emphasis and everything, just like he practiced it on the limo ride over from the White House, I presume. They do that to solicit applause from Trump's base of paranoid reactionary white people who have come to regard the words Muslim and terrorist as synonymous since the 9/11 attacks, but in doing so, they ignore the fact that more Americans have been killed since 9/11 by people motivated by white supremacist or anti-government sentiment than by radical Islamist ideologies. So let's pretend, just for shits and giggles, that instead of using the issue to pander to racists in his never-ending presidential campaign, Trump and his administration want to actually get serious about preventing homegrown terrorism. What are some steps they could take? By the way, I know it's fashionable in YouTube skeptical circles to pretend to be an expert on subjects that you obviously know very little about, but I just can't bring myself to do that. Now, as always, please do not regard me or this video as a primary source or assume that I expect you to take my word as law on any of this. These are just my opinions on an admittedly very complex subject. Fortunately for me, thanks to the gross incompetence and blatant bigotry of the Trump administration, most of what I'm about to say is fairly obvious. Now then, suggestion number one, lead by example. Organized white supremacists have been empowered and emboldened by the Trump campaign and administration. So if Trump wants to get serious about fighting white supremacist terrorism, the first thing he needs to do is get rid of all the white supremacists that he has hired to work in his administration. There are many reasons why an ever-increasing number of people find it impossible to take anything this president says in support of racial or ethnic equality seriously. One of the biggest reasons is all of the racists that work in the White House. And that problem is easily fixed. We already know he likes to fire people. Suggestion number two, focus on the real threat. Earlier this year, it was reported that Trump wanted to modify the government's Countering Violent Extremism program, or CVE. This is a program that funds community efforts to deter people from joining up with violent extremist groups. Trump reportedly wants CVE to focus exclusively on Islamist extremism and no longer concern itself with white supremacy. Again, this is easily fixed. Terrorism inspired by white supremacy is a far greater and more urgent threat to Americans than terrorism inspired by extremist Islamism. So all Trump has to do is pick up the phone and call whoever's in charge over there at CVE and say, hey, guess what? I changed my mind. I actually do want white supremacy to be a part of your mission after all. And while he's at it, he can make a similar phone call to the Justice Department and tell the same thing to his new Attorney General, because remember, Jeff Sessions' racist ass doesn't work there anymore. Suggestion number three, harness the power of the PSA. Some folks already consider the Ad Council to be the federal government's propaganda mill, so why not use it to raise awareness about the dangers of white supremacy? It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Are they hanging out with neo-Nazis? Because if so, that's a problem, don't you think? I don't know, so I'm not good at it. They'd write a better one. Suggestion number four, education. I should specify, because education is something from which the Trump administration would benefit at every level. I mean teaching public school students about the history of organized white supremacy and the violence for which it has been responsible. And I don't just mean a passing mention here and there in between detailed studies of all the wars we won. I mean in-depth teaching about the history of white supremacist organizations, where they come from, under what conditions they have arisen, how they recruit, and what horrors they have wrought on our society when allowed to gain too much influence. Now, these are just general suggestions, and some of them, particularly the education one, are clearly more of a long-term strategy than a short-term one, and obviously implementing any of these suggestions would require a great deal of courage and introspection from Trump, because no president in living memory has done more to energize white supremacists than him. And also because courage and the capacity for introspection are not qualities that he seems to possess in any measure. But, like I said, this is all just pretend.